And welcome, my friends, to this Easter message. I just decided that I would start streaming again. I guess someday I'll figure out how to do that. But sometimes I don't know until the last minute that I feel like doing these live Q&As. So, it's the Easter weekend, so maybe there are people around, maybe not. I don't know, but if there are, you can make your way onto the channel, and this is a good opportunity to get me to answer some questions for you. So, since this is being recorded and archived, I'm going to go ahead and get started and just start putting some of my thoughts out there about things. I'm loosely, identifying this as an Easter message. It's more like it's kind of an excuse for me to talk about something that's just been really on my mind a lot lately, which is the idea of resurrection on a personal level, the idea of transforming yourself and working through challenges, and really, not surrendering to the challenges, which, is the same as the idea of resurrecting yourself, going through the transformation of death to resurrection. So I'll just go ahead and get started with some of the cool, sort of interesting things that happen to be connected to the idea of Easter. So, one of the great things about Easter is that the name Easter comes directly from our ancestral shamanic heritage, because the name Easter is, without any changes whatsoever, it is the Old English word for the goddess of the dawn. And it comes from the root word in the Indo-European language of Hausos. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's, from what I can tell, that's how it was pronounced, Hausos. And that became Ostara and Eostre, and then in Old English, Eastere, Easter. And it had such a powerful impact on the lives of our ancestors that the Christian church could not get rid of it. I mean, they were able to change the solstice celebration into Christ Mass, but when it came to the celebration for the spring, they were unable to change it, and they had to keep the old pagan name for it, which is Easter. And so people, without even realizing it, when they say, I'm going to go to Easter Mass, even though they say they're going to, a Christian church, what they're saying is they're going to a service for the goddess of the dawn. It obviously, you can see it has the same connection to the word for the direction east, which is, where does the dawn come from? It comes directly from the east. And so this is what this time of year is about. And in fact, the month of April was called Easter month. And then it was changed, of course, the Christians changed it to the Latin April. But originally it was Easter month. And I may be wrong on this. I've heard this. I can't say that I've verified it, but it sounds believable to me, is that the idea of April Fools was that the first day of April, which would have been Easter month, would have been considered by the pagans as being the first day of the year. And so, when Christianity came in and Catholicism and all that, they brought the Julian, I believe it was the Julian calendar, which was from Rome. And so instead of starting the year in April 1st, they started it January 1st. And so the pagans would be celebrating the new year on April 1st. And so the Christians who lived near them would play pranks on them and then say, ha ha, April Fools, because you were an April Fool. For, basically, if you were a pagan, you still lived in the country. Pagan actually doesn't mean that you a polytheist. Pagan means you live in the country. Pagan means, the modern way would be calling it somebody like a hick or trailer trash. In fact, the word heathen, same thing. Heathen doesn't mean somebody who worships the old gods. It means somebody who lives on the heath, somebody who lives out in the boonies. Trailer trash, a hick. So the uneducated people, the trailer trash, the hicks, they worshipped the old gods, and so that's why, when you called somebody a pagan, you're actually commenting on them being poor and stupid and uneducated. And if they were smart, they'd live in the city and they'd be Christians. That's where this came from. So an April Fool was you were making fun of some uneducated country bumpkin who didn't know that April was not the beginning of the year, and so they would play pranks on them. So that's where I heard that's where April Fools comes from. So I could be wrong about that, but anyway. So we've got 4 people on here. So I'm going to talk a little bit longer, and then I'm going to open it up. Pretty soon I'm going to have to turn a light on in here because it's the sun is starting to go down here. So Easter and resurrection. I'm really thinking about this because I really want to again focus on this idea of taking full responsibility for our lives. And this is something that has been helpful for me. And listen, as some people have pointed out, really, I'm no different than anybody else listening to me. I don't see myself as being an enlightened master. I call myself a master shaman. I don't do that because I feel that I've achieved, high, complete mastery, but it's just a way to market myself as a teacher. And it was the recommendation of my teacher. He said, "You've got to stop belittling yourself. You're a master. It doesn't mean that you've achieved everything. It just means that you're at the level of, you're a teacher, so you call yourself a master." That's my way of saying that, listen, I have difficulties too. I'm going through some difficult stuff. And I am brought back to my own philosophy that I've been teaching, which is that we are completely responsible for our lives. And that everything that we experience in our lives is the result of our own projection. Everything. And we have a choice how we want to view things. And I'm not talking about being a Pollyanna, about finding, putting a smile on your face and pretending everything is wonderful. Anybody who knows me knows that's the last thing that I do. In fact, if I'm with somebody and I feel like they're doing that, I will call them on it. Unless, of course, it's just not appropriate. But, I'll say, "Hey, listen, what's going on with you? Something's up." So I'm not one of those people that just says, "Turn that frown upside down." Definitely not. When you're having difficulty, you've got to have all of your feelings. But the whole point of this life for me is about enjoying it. And so this idea of resurrection, we're coming into celebrating this idea, whether you're, having to go to church or, whatever it is that you do to, Passover, whatever it is, it still has this same connotation of resurrection and death and resurrection, rising from the ashes. And for me, that is not possible unless you adopt an attitude of fearlessness and an attitude of taking full responsibility. Because the moment that you allow yourself to believe that somebody else is doing it to you, you lose all options. You have only one option. So, I was somebody commented on my channel today and yesterday, and it happens a lot, especially when people aren't familiar with my channel and they stumble on it and they see one of my videos where I say the reason why people go through difficulties in life is because they've chosen to, and that just infuriates people. And as I've said before, the people who are the most furious about it, they always come to this same example. And this guy said he was going to prove to me that I didn't know what I was talking about, because think of all of the poor, helpless children in the world, and then he creates this example of somebody being watching their parents brutally murdered, and then being I don't want to use the word because I don't want YouTube to flag me, but being harmed in a way that is the most damaging. You can fill in the blank there. That is always the example that is used, always. And so what that means is that the people who get the most angry, who respond the most angrily to the idea that they have created everything in their lives, including all of the difficulties, if that is their first response in order to justify that can't be true, then of course I say that understandably that's how they see themselves. They see themselves as these helpless children who are being violated by the universe. And I'm not judging it. It's a normal reaction to feel that way. So regardless of how you feel about it, it leaves you with basically two choices. You are either a victim of a cruel, empty universe, or you're a victim of an angry God or gods. And the only other alternative, the third alternative, is this is something that you have created. And so for me, I say this to people, I don't care if what I believe is actually true or not. What I care is it something that will help me in life? And seeing myself as a victim does not help me in life. Seeing myself as a participant helps me. It doesn't necessarily take the difficulty or the challenge or even the pain away initially. But it puts me in a frame of mind where I start to think about how to seek for and create solutions. So I guess I kind of want to bring this theme into the idea of Easter. That in our ancestors' viewpoint, these are people who lived without the benefits of technology like we do today. And, especially in Northern Europe, and especially now, things were a lot colder back then. In fact, I'm hearing from people in Germany, they're saying that spring is coming earlier and earlier every year, and it's really warm. Whereas, 6 weeks ago, normally, before the climate started shifting, it would have been a lot colder there. So you can imagine our ancestors 2,000 years ago, without the benefit of any kind of electricity or coal or natural gas or the kind of technology we use to keep ourselves warm. It could have been a tough time. And so spring was really something to celebrate. And of course the flowers would be blooming and all of that. And again, coming back to the idea of our pagan traditions, our polytheist traditions, I wish we could change that word to polytheist. Our polytheist traditions were so powerful in the minds of our ancestors that the church couldn't get rid of it. So much so that the Easter bunny, not the spring bunny, the Easter bunny. Easter, again, is the name of the goddess of the East, the goddess of the dawn. Her name was Easter. We haven't even changed her name. The goddess Easter. There was the bunnies of the goddess Easter, which that obviously is, a totem of spring, of the goddess. So bunnies would have been seen as coming directly from the goddess Easter, the goddess of the dawn. And Easter eggs. We don't call them spring eggs. We don't call them Jesus eggs. We don't call them resurrection eggs. We call them Easter eggs. Again, Easter is the name of the goddess of the dawn. And so the Christian church was unable to get rid of it. And so people use it. They don't even know what it means, but they still use it. they still throw out the name of the goddess of the dawn, whose name in Old English was Easter, Easter. So, let me see how many people we got here. Do we have any questions? Because you can ask questions. We got 8 people watching at this point, and let's see if there's any questions. I'm not seeing anything. I hope I have chat turned on. If I don't, I apologize, but I think I turned it on. Oh, Alicia Cole, here she is. Totally agree about not accepting the victim of the universe role. It's not helpful in life in any way. Yes, we are on the same page there. So, all right. So, again, these Q&As are for you guys to ask me whatever you want. I realize that it's Easter, so people are probably with their family and their friends and what have you. So, I'm going to go ahead and just keep talking. We'll see where this goes. Again, I haven't planned anything out for today. So I want to talk now about persistence, because you can't get to this point of resurrection without persistence. So I'm going to talk about some things I've been thinking about which have to do with past lives and future lives. And I was sharing about this. By the way, I'm going to have to start teaching another really practical shamanic science, which is called the astrology of the North Star astrology. It's a real simple process. In fact, if somebody wants to look it up, they can. You can go to, I think it's called ChineseShamanism.com. They have a version of that. But it's a way to take a look at everybody's year, the year that you were born, and you can see which of the 9 cycles you're in. We go through 9 cycles. In fact, am I right in saying that every 9 years all of the cells in your body have changed? You're literally not the same person you were, or is it every 7 years? I can't remember which. But we go through 9 9-year cycles, and it works with the thunder wheel, which again is the main thing that I use. You look at it here. Here's the thunder wheel. And it works with the 8 directions. And so depending on what year you're in, you're going to be in one of those 8 directions. And then every 9th year, you end up in the center, which means that all of the other energies come crashing in on you. I am in one of those years. It starts in February. It goes from February to February. So since February, I've been in one of those years, and I can tell you it's definitely the case. And what the lesson behind every one of these transformation years, these 9th years, is that what you do in that year is going to lay the foundation for the next 8 years, basically the next decade of your life. And so the idea is, if you go through one of these years and they're challenging, then it's even more important that you act from consciousness, because you're going to be creating the foundation for the next 8 years. So the idea is, if you don't act from consciousness and you're in one of these years and you act in ways that are self-destructive, or you're trying to avoid the challenge that's coming to you, then what's going to happen is you're going to live in that. And so you want to stay conscious. So it really takes persistence. And for me, what helps me through this is to keep persisting in this understanding that everything in my life is my own creation. That everything in my life is my own projection. And here's something else I'm going to share with you when you go through difficult periods. And this comes from the Hawaiian shamanic tradition. And from their belief system, they teach that, again, everything in your life, including this cup in front of me, everything, where you live, what's happening, is your projection. And we do it all the time. We are constantly thinking about what it is that we want. We think about, we're projecting our life. And if we are trapped in negative thinking, again, I'm not saying don't have feelings. I'm talking about the attitudes and the projections that we take on. If you're thinking about negative thinking, if you're thinking about failure, if you're thinking about all that stuff, then the universe takes that as an order. It's constantly writing down your order for what what it's going to give you. And so when you get to the point where you shift and you want to change your reality, then what ends up happening, imagine you've got all these people, you're walking towards your future, and there's, the universe is ahead of you, sort of hammering, this edifice, creating like the set for your life. And so if you change the order, like that, and you decide to make a shift, then you imagine all these people who are putting together this house that's going to be your future, and they get this message, okay, we got to tear everything down and we got to start over again. So they do. They start tearing everything down. Now what that means is that there's a lag time. As you come into your future, if you run into challenges, it's because the set is being torn down. And so as I understand it, the Hawaiians say, when you want to create a better future, then your old life has to come crashing down on your head, because it's like you're tearing everything down and rebuilding it again. So again, that's why it's so important to stay persistent, because if you stay persistent in taking full responsibility for your life, and in order to do that, by the way, you have to believe. Let me kind of back up here. If you want to get over any kind of victim mentality, the first thing that has to happen is you have to trust in the universe. You have to trust that the universe wants you to be completely fulfilled and happy. Notice I didn't say it wants you to be rich, wants you to have a mansion and $1 billion, because the universe doesn't know for money. It really doesn't. It doesn't know what that means. We make a big deal out of that. The universe doesn't know. Again, for instance, where I live now. I live in a pretty good setup. Now, I'm looking to change it, but that's okay. Life is always about having some goal to move toward. I want to live right on the beach. I want to be able to look out my window and see exactly what kind of waves are and pick from my surfboards which surfboard I want. That's my goal. So I know I'm going to get there. But in the meantime, I have this tiny little back house that was literally built for me. They didn't realize they were doing that, but the person had built it on their property, brand new from scratch, and I showed up saying, I want to rent this. And so it's as if somebody built a tiny little house for me. And it's surrounded by flowers and garden and birds and all of that, even though I'm in the middle of Southern California. So the universe has been very plentiful for me, and it's cheap. I mean, it's so cheap to live here. So it's a pretty good setup. Do I have $1 billion in the bank? No, but I am really comfortable and rich, and the universe has taken care of me in this regard. So this is what I mean. You have to trust that the universe will give you not only what you need and what you want, but what will fulfill you. And we tend to put onto the universe what we think we're supposed to have. And I've shared this many times before. I won't get into it, but there are a lot of people in the world who have a ton of money and a ton of stuff and a ton of fame, and they're just absolutely miserable. So that stuff doesn't do it. But, how many beds do you need to sleep in? How many beds can you sleep in at one time? I can only sleep in one. How many cars can you drive at one time? I can only drive one. That kind of stuff. Having I guess the only, my indulgence is surfboards. Right now I only have 2, because I've sold the other 5 that I had, and I've got 2 more coming. So that's my indulgence. But you get where I'm going here. So anyway, we've got now 11 people watching. So I want to open this up again to any questions that you have. Of course, questions that are surrounded or connected to this idea of transformation, resurrection, perseverance, how to get through challenges. Those are the ones that I'd like to focus on, but I'll entertain just about any. Okay, so I don't see any other questions here yet. A lot of people are probably just showing up, so happy Easter. So, okay, so I'll keep talking about this subject again, about how we create our own reality. So now let's take some of these extreme examples. Now, I've already shared with you, whenever I share this, that everything in our life is our own creation, and that all of the challenges that are unavoidable, there are avoidable challenges, and then there's challenges that are unavoidable. And people will use the word karma to denote this. So understand that karma doesn't mean good or bad, but we only talk about karma when we're talking about bad stuff, stuff that's challenging. So imagine the worst case scenario. I've already shared what most people throw out there when I say that we've created our own lives. And what about the poor so-and-sos and the so-and-so that go through blah, blah, blah? How can you possibly say that they've chosen to go through that? So let's talk about how does that happen. Let's just get that out of the way. So if, as we've been talking about, we're constantly creating our future, right? The thoughts and the projections that we have, which are based on our beliefs, again, if you believe that the universe wants to give you everything, then you are going to create, you're going to intend based on that belief. If you have a deep-seated belief that the universe has it in for you, that you are evil, that you are unlovable, that you're a sinner, that fill in the blank. If you have that belief on a deep unconscious level, then it's going to be that much more difficult to manifest positive things, because your unconscious is what creates it all. Having said that, your unconscious holds on to patterns based on the continuous ideas, the continuous attitudes that you adopt. So you can change that right now. So it is definitely true that I can say to you, you can change your reality right now if you choose to adopt the belief that the universe wants to give you everything that you need and fulfill all your desires. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to have that immediately, because as we've talked about, the future is out there and the universe is sort of pounding hammers and nails, putting together what you're intending. So it's going to take a while. Here's the hard part. This is why persistence is so important. Because if you've been living on this unconscious assumption that the universe has it in for you, and you see yourself as a victim, and you have difficult, challenging scenarios surrounding you, which fulfill that belief that the universe has it in for you, then it's going to take a lot of persistence to continuously choose to believe that you are going to be taken care of. See what I mean? And so where we stumble is that we can have an epiphany of, oh my gosh, everything is my own creation, and then blah, blah, blah. And then what happens is, that inertia doesn't go anywhere, because we have been operating from that belief, that negative belief, for sometimes decades. But for some of us, it's been lifetimes, multiple lifetimes. So that's how, if we have unavoidable tragedy in our lives, unavoidable tragedy is a result of one of, or a combination of, two things. In between lives, we have said, you know what, I really need to learn a lesson about X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to create a scenario so that I will be forced to learn that lesson. Or there has been such self-sabotage, and the effects of self-sabotage. Let me give you an example. An effect of self-sabotage would be drinking, a gallon of wine every night for 30 years. And then somebody ends up with bladder cancer. Well, that's the result of that continuous, right? So the thoughts are the same way. Our attitudes are the same way. If we continue to indulge in self-sabotaging things, then we create this environment that's going to, we experience as, oh, this disease has hit me, or whatever it is. It's not. It's a result of, the actions that we've taken. And your beliefs are, the universe sees your beliefs as actions. Did you know that? The universe sees your beliefs that you choose to believe in and invest in as an action. And you get to receive the benefit of that. So this is why persistence is so important, because you can change your mind and say, yes, I'm going to change my mind and I'm going to start believing and trusting in the universe. And then what happens is that all those unconscious patterns that we've been indulging in for perhaps lifetimes kick in, and it is virtually impossible for us to do things differently. You know, this is why, you know, I'll give you an easy example that, you know, probably you can see, and we can see how crazy this behavior is and why are they doing that, but we can also see that they have little if no control over the choices that they make. And that is people who get into physically abusive relationships. You know, and you'll get involved and you say, you know, leave that guy, he's no good for you. You go and report him to the police and blah, blah, blah. And if they're strong enough to do that, a lot of times what'll happen? They'll find another guy that will abuse them. And you go, why did you do that? And now you can apply it to yourself. We all do it. We all make those same kind of choices like, oh my God, I did it again. That's that unconscious mind. It's a result of, at some point in our past, we made the decision to indulge in some kind of self-sabotaging belief system, like, you know, the universe has it in for me, or I'm not good enough, or why don't things happen for me, or some kind of victim mentality got stuck in there. And then that starts to take hold, you know? So that's why if we have, you know, for instance, those poor children in such and such, you know, country, how could they possibly have chosen that? That's obviously the result of something that's happened in previous lives where you know, and it's hard for me to talk about it because I can feel the anger as I talk about it. I can feel people's anger. They get, you know, nobody likes to hear that. But it's the result of that. And so the only way out of unavoidable difficulties, the only way out of the unavoidable ones is to acknowledge and accept the idea that, okay, I don't know how or why, but I have created this circumstance and there's a way out. If you don't accept responsibility, then you literally lock yourself into it and there's no way out. And we can see that in people who are no longer living in those difficult circumstances, but they still have the trauma to such a degree that they can't function. And we can look at them on the outside and say, well, why don't you just get over it? You know, I've had people say that to me before. It's the worst thing to be told. Just get over it. It's the worst thing to be told. But if they're unable to get over it, you know, then you see what I mean? It's really tough overcoming that unconscious, those unconscious patterns that we have adopted. So the only way out of difficulties is to accept that we take responsibility. Now, again, I wish I could get the link for it, but I saw it on Facebook. I don't know when it was, a year ago or 2 years ago or maybe 3 years ago. I don't remember. But it was about a paratrooper. Maybe you know who I'm talking about. A paratrooper whose knees were completely destroyed and he was walking on crutches. And all the doctors said, you know, he's never going to be able to walk again. And he's really overweight and he's miserable. And he decided he doesn't want to be in pain anymore. And no doctors are helping him. They're just telling him, no, take these pain medications. Sorry, there's nothing, you know, your knees are destroyed. We can't fix it. There's nothing anybody can do. And he goes to these yoga masters and he tries to ask these, will you teach me and help me to strengthen my body? And they all reject. They say, you know, I can't help you. You're far too gone. Except one guy decides to take him and help him. And then you see the video of him every day trying to do handstands and, you know, strengthen his core, and he's falling down and you're thinking, wow, this great. And again, I look at it and I think, with the first time I saw it, I'm like, wow, I bet you at the end we're going to see him maybe walking a little bit without crutches, right? And that would be great. Nope. By the end, the guy is svelte, he's in good shape, and he's sprinting like an Olympic sprinter. And even I was blown away at how the change that took over that guy. And it's because he refused to give up. And there's no way that he would have continued with that had he not had the belief that the universe wanted to give him health. If he didn't have that belief, nobody would have been able to continually, persistently, not only get, just a little bit of improvement. I mean, most people would have got a little bit of improvement and stopped. He didn't stop. He didn't stop until he was completely 100% mobile and healthy again. And, it takes a lot for me, but I watched that and I was weeping at the end of it. And I was weeping not so much for him, but my gosh, look at what the universe can do for somebody who chooses to believe. And this is why our ancestors had this belief about Valhalla, which is that if you die in battle, you go to Valhalla. If you die from illness, you go to the underworld. And the way that I interpret that to mean is, if you die fearlessly, and if you are persistent about living fearlessly from your heart, then you don't need to come back. But if you die from illness, meaning if you adopt some kind of defeatist attitude, if you allow yourself to surrender to whatever the difficulty is, and you accept being imprisoned by that, even if it's at not at some level, then guess what? You have to go back, because you're not going to be fulfilled. So let me, once again, speaking of the dawn, let's turn the light on here. So let me once again, I forgot what I was going to say. Anyway, it'll come to me. So let me see if there's any questions here. Jersey Shore asks, does the universe receive our beliefs at all times? Are there more significant times, such as sleep, meditation? Is it literally what we are thinking, or are we speaking to ourselves using self-talk? Okay, so there's a lot in there. Does the universe receive our beliefs at all times? Yes. If you go back to the idea of weird, right? If you go back and watch the videos I put upon weird, which is how time unfolds, and time and space cannot be extricated, which means physical matter and time are not extricated. They are the same. Creation. The universe is created through time. And as we see with weird, the present moment, the past and the future are the result of the present. Again, we think in linear terms, and the universe doesn't work in linear terms. The past is created from the present as well as the future. There is only the present. And the present moment is continuously creating itself every nanosecond. So it's like somebody likened it to a film. It's just this, one little, I think it was Bashar. Bashar called it like a film, each one little picture at a time. Remember the film? It was one little picture taken at a time, and then you put them together really fast and you get this moving picture. That's what creation is. And so each second, nanosecond, whatever it is, our belief systems are imprinted upon this reality, which then manifests itself. So yes, every single nanosecond of your existence, the universe is recording and manifesting your thoughts, beliefs, feelings, everything. This is why persistence is so important. Now, when you think about that, that is really daunting and overwhelming. It's overwhelming to me, because how could I possibly be super conscious in every single nanosecond? I don't know how somebody can do that. So what we have to do is we have to change the base assumption in our unconscious mind, not in our conscious mind, not the talking blah, blah, blah. That has a place, but where it's really happening is in our unconscious. So let's talk about how do these things get into our unconscious mind. Let's take somebody who has a belief, let's say somebody who has a belief that the universe, the universe has it in for them, they're not good enough, they're not pretty enough. In order to be loved, you have to be this, that, or the other thing. These are the kinds of beliefs that are deep in our unconscious mind that are continuously fueling everything that you do. It's unconscious because it means you are not consciously aware. You have no idea that it's happening. The conscious mind is aware. I'm conscious of what I'm saying. I'm conscious I'm holding this. I'm not conscious of all the things that are going on in my unconscious mind. So that is working all the time when we're asleep, when we're awake. So what do you do when you become aware that you have self-sabotaging base beliefs? Well, you can start by consciously trying to focus on I'm responsible for my life. You can do that. That's what affirmations are, and that's good, but it's not everything. As you probably know, I know I've run into a lot of people. I know I've done it. You can say affirmations all day long and still end up, miserable and fearful and all that kind of stuff. So there's a limit to what the conscious mind can do. So what we have to do is change from the level of the unconscious. This is done through ritual. This is done through meditation. This is why our ancestors did ritual so often, and everything had a ritual to it. Because when you light the candles and when you put the whatever it is, you put the symbols, you put up the idols, whatever these symbolic things are, that has smells to them, the dancing, all of these things, these are things that our unconscious mind really pays attention to. And so that is why, let's say, if you set up an altar in your home to whatever god or goddess it is, and you meditate on that deity, you meditate on that idol, or you chant the mantra to that deity, what ends up happening is that you are setting these foundational vibrations into your unconscious mind. So one of the reasons why our world is so chaotic is because we don't have these kinds of rituals. We have all kinds of rituals that we do, but a lot of them are not done consciously. They're done out of fear and out of all kinds of other things. So when we make a conscious effort to create a ritual, then we start taking over. We start gaining power over us creating our unconscious mind. Okay? That's throwing a lot of stuff at you, so feel free to come back and, rewatch these things. I know I throw a lot of stuff. It's deep stuff. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was a great thing to do it. So that's one way to do it. Now, meditation won't do it because there's a lot of people who meditate who are still very unconscious. So this is when it comes, down to making decisions like, I am going to continue to choose to trust. Notice I say that you choose to trust. You don't have to feel it. Now, this will also change your unconscious, but when you do it, your unconscious mind will rebel against you if it's a change, if it's a shift. Because our unconscious mind is here to protect us. So I'll give you an extreme example, people who have multiple personalities. People who have multiple personalities create multiple personalities because they've gone through intolerable trauma. Trauma that the conscious mind cannot tolerate. So they partition themselves into different personalities. But the interesting thing about that is that many of the protective personalities that are created don't know what year it is, right? They don't know what the year is. They don't know what time it is. They don't know what day it is. They don't live in that. And that reminds me of ghosts, because that's what ghosts do. ghost, if you talk to if you're able to communicate with a ghost and you ask them, what is the year, they'll tell you it's 1875 or whatever it is. They're reliving, because that's not the true soul. That is, it's like a partitioned personality that's been created to protect the individual. We talked about that. But this is what our unconscious mind is here to do. So the chaos that we create, if somebody has the belief, I run into this all the time. People who believe that the universe is out to destroy them. People who believe that this earth is a prison and that we are lorded over by these evil archons who present themselves as beings of light so that they can keep feeding off of us. That is a really victim mentality. And so what is the benefit of having that belief? It's obviously there to protect people. And why would we choose to create some kind of self-protection that doesn't ultimately help us? That's the main lesson, is working through it. Working through our unconscious beliefs to see, is this protective belief helping me or not? Right? So again, we could get into all of that. But anyway. Can you please say Leela Mulchandani? Okay, I don't know why you're doing that. Are you trying to do some kind of spell on me or something? I'm saying your name. All right, I said it. I don't know why you wanted me to do that, but there you go. All right. Renee agrees with me. Well, I love being agreed with. My ego enjoys that. So, anyway, you asked a really great question there, Jersey Shore. That was probably one of the best questions I've heard, not because other questions are bad, it's just that gave me a lot to focus on, because that's really the question, isn't it? How do we? Ultimately, look, all of this stuff that I teach, whether it's Qigong, whether it's energy work, whether it's whatever it is, I do it so that you have a practical tool to make your life better. There's only one thing that matters. The only thing that matters when all of this is done is whether or not you enjoyed your life. That's it. I heard somebody say, I was on the radio, and it said, the only thing that matters in life is, or the only thing about what you do in life that matters is if it benefits others. I like that thought, but I don't agree with that. The only thing that matters is if you enjoyed your life. As it turns out, you cannot enjoy your life without benefiting other people. It's not possible. It's also not possible to cause damage to other people if you hate your life. People like alcoholics will say, I'm not hurting anybody else. I'm just, no. Alcoholism destroys everybody else first. Everybody else that's in the sphere of the alcoholic. That's true if you're angry, if you're miserable, if you're suicidal. You're destroying other people's lives by destroying yourself. But you can't worry about other people. That's the other thing. You start, I don't want to make other people unhappy. You got to start with you. If you fulfill your deepest desires, you will benefit not only everybody around you, but the entire universe. And so then we can talk about, karma, right? Good karma. Why do people have good lives? Why do good things happen? It's because the universe will respond, and so will everybody else. I teach this in Vedic astrology. By the way, anybody who has not had a Vedic astrological reading from me, I recommend it, because this is one of the things I share with people, is how to gain luck, which is how to get people to give you things. And that has to do with some real simple things like learning what planet is guiding your path. And when you can have the vibrations of that planet in your body, in your aura, when you can have the vibrations of that planet in your aura, that will help you to follow your true path, which will make other people happy, because when you're on your true path, people are benefited from it, and they unconsciously, instinctively like you and want to help you. And so, anyway, that's just one practical thing. Anyway, let's see if any other things came up. Qigong may help. I agree with you, Renee. Qigong is, again, one of those things that gives you the ability to gain power, because sometimes you need power to do things. Let's see. Hi, Leela. No, I'm not. I'm not a what do you call those things? I'm not a jukebox. So I'm not a parrot. I don't know why you're asking me to say these things, but makes me wonder. Anyway, let's see here. So any other questions that I can respond to, because we're getting up to the hour. The other thing that Jersey Shore asked, is there more significant times? That's a yes and no answer to that question. Powerful times to do ritual are at the new moon and at the full moon. And specifically when it comes to the full moon, the way to get the most out of the full moon is the day before and the day after. Especially the day before the full moon. That's when the moon is really at its peak. Because by the time you get to the full moon, it's sort of like, something that's climbing up in the sky, and then it's going to turn around and it's going to start falling down again. And usually it's already starting to fall by the time you're out and you see the full moon. So the day before is one of the most powerful times there for the full moon. The new moon is really good because the new moon represents when our mind is clouded. When our mind is specifically, the new moon is when the earth is between the sun and the moon is not getting sunlight. So there's no sunlight being reflected off of the moon. And the moon is our mind, as you know. In fact, the word moon comes from the word man. Man means human, and it means moon, and it means mind. So our mind is the reflection of the soul, and the sun is representative of the soul. So that means that it represents when our mind is not being illuminated by the Spirit. And so when the mind is not being illuminated by the Spirit, we operate from what? Our darkness, our unconscious garbage. So I really feel that. The moon is really strong in my chart, and so I really feel the new moon. There are lots of times when I just feel really horrible and I don't know what's going on, and then I'll look and say, oh, it's a new moon. And that kind of helps. It helps me get through it. But that's why it's a good time to meditate on the new moon, because then you can really work through improving your unconscious mind. I'm going to say one more thing. Oh, now she's telling me. Okay, so Leela wants me to say, I love you. Yes, Leela Mul Chandani, I don't know you, but of course I love you. There you go. All right, so let's see, Renee. Yep. Okay, so Renee talks about sin, and I want to talk about sin. There was an anachronism, I think I'm saying that right, where you spell things out with letters, that somebody said to me years ago about sin, and he said S-I-N, self-imposed negativity. I completely believe in that. So if you want to believe in punishment, if you want to believe in negative karma as punishment, if you want to believe that God punishes sinners, I would accept that to the degree that our self-imposed negativity, self-imposed anger, self-imposed shame, self-imposed sabotage, and lots of times, like I said, we're trying to protect ourselves, but we're operating from our self-imposed negativity. And again, it starts from the belief that we're limited. It starts from the belief that we are not loved, and that the universe doesn't want to give to us. So again, I'm going to share with you something that I think is really important, which is When you adopt the understanding that you are God, then what I'm about to tell you will make more sense. The universe doesn't know that you are being, the universe is not capable of detecting whether or not you are being self-destructive in your intentions. The universe is your servant. It bows to you and serves you. And if you continue to intend negative things based on fear, based on whatever, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, nobody loves you, blah, blah, blah. The universe goes, okay, because it doesn't know that you don't know any better. It thinks that you know more than it does. And so if you're intending that, the universe goes, oh, well, they must want to experience that for some reason, so let's create that for them. So if you accept the idea that you are God and that the universe is your servant that loves you and wants to fulfill your deepest desires, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to have the persistence to change those unconscious belief systems, to change what you tell yourself about the world. So that's why I say the most important thing isn't, the affirmations or even the mantras. The first thing that has to happen is you have to choose to believe that the universe has it in for you in a good way and only wants to give you everything that you want. And yeah, there we go. So let's see. I'm just reading here. I'm merely curious also, how do we know which ritual specifically to partake in? Renee answered that question. Get a Vedic reading, because I can look at your chart and that will tell me what planets are working for you. It'll tell me not only that, but how the planet wants to be worshipped and which deities want to be worshipped. So it'll tell me, like for instance, I'll give you an example. One of my most beneficial planets, in fact, the go-to planet for me is Mars. I could get into why that is, but that's why the sleeveless shirt and the muscles and the beard and the shaved head, that's Mars. I am honoring Mars. Mars is the one that's really working for my benefit in the external. So I worship Mars a lot. In my chart, I can see that Mars wants to be worshipped with a liquid. So I will, I'm in Libra, which means that it's a Venus sign and the direction for Venus is west. So for me to get the most out of Mars, I need to face west and have some kind of a liquid, which is Venus again, liquid. When I worship Mars that way, it sort of aligns everything up and I get the most out of how Mars wants to help me. So how you should do it, I can't tell you because I haven't looked at your chart. But I can, if somebody gets a reading from me, I can look and see exactly what planet, which direction to face, what to use, whether it's an idol or whether it's incense or whether it's mantra or those kinds of things. So to answer your question, I'd have to look at your chart to tell you exactly how to do that. And it's a great question because a lot of people are doing all kinds of things. This is why one size fits all doesn't work. You go to a temple or you go to a this and everybody's doing the same thing. And if you're not wired for that, it's not going to have the same benefit for you. In fact, it might have, a challenging effect. The universe is pretty forgiving. So if you don't know any better, the universe will cut you some slack. But if you know better, then the universe is going to say, now. So now you got to follow the rules. So now that you've heard this from me, you kind of have to follow the rules. To get the most out of it. I forgot what I was going to say. So anyway, let's see. Okay, so Renee has been helpful, and thank you, Renee. I'm glad that you have benefited from the Vedic reading. So so we're coming up right smack dab at 1 hour. So I'm going to keep talking for a few more minutes, and if more questions come up, I'll go ahead and answer them. If not, let's just recap. Let's go back to, let me just see. It feels like there's something in me that's still looking to come out. And I'm having a hard, it's something having to do with projecting your intent and creating your environment with your intent. And why it's so important to, again, you know, I'm not trying to put out any kind of super, you know, spiritual vibe of if you're spiritual and wonderful, you know, because to me that reeks of self-hatred. Whenever you see people who are trying to pretend to be this, and, you know, if you just love the, you know, that reeks to me of self-hatred and shame, because positivity for me doesn't mean putting a smile on my face all the time. That to me can be, you know, people, listen, that'll kill some people. And I mean that in all seriousness. There are people dying of physical diseases because they had so much shame and about their own negative feelings, their anger, their fear, their sadness. Usually anger is the big one. People are so, you know, and what does our society tell us? You know, if you were really spiritual, you wouldn't be so angry, you know? At the same time, nobody likes being around an angry person. I get that. Nobody likes being around a miserable person, but, you know, when you can love yourself through your negative feelings, right? That's positivity. And the end result of that is at some point you will smile, right? Because you will have healed that. You will love yourself. Again, it comes back to you. If you can't love yourself, you know, it doesn't matter what good you do. Again, that comes back to that other saying that somebody said, you know, the only thing that matters what you do in life is how it affects other people. What good is that if it destroys you in the process? Again, if you love yourself, you will love other people. If you are, if you fulfill your deepest desires, you will make everyone else happy. And again, I'll come back to, you know, that sounds really simple, right? Except that in my experience, when it comes to fulfilling what I call your soul desire, connected with that will be your karmic lesson, which is, give you an example, let's say a girl grows up in a home of mathematicians and scientists, and she wants to become a dancer. She wants to become a ballet dancer. But her scientist father thinks that there's no value in that, and okay, take a few classes as a kid, but now you got to grow up and I want you to become an accountant or, you know, whatever it is, you know, do something of value. If that girl has the strength of spirit to say, I'm sorry, Dad, I love you, but I have to follow what makes me happy. And Dad says, well, that's it. I'm cutting you off. You're getting no more money. You're not my daughter anymore. Get out of my sight, right? That would be a karmic challenge, because then she would have to choose between the love of her father and the fulfillment of her soul. And it's not going to be an easy thing. Most people choose to make happy other people, and they choose not to go after what they want because they feel ashamed, right? So it even on the unconscious level, this is really important, on the unconscious level, it feels like you're killing them. So for this girl, this hypothetical girl, who I'm sure exists somewhere, I'm sure there's a lot of them that exist, but this hypothetical girl, we'll call her Karen. If Karen makes the decision to follow her soul path, she is going to have to work through the unconscious feeling that she is killing her father, and the shame and the guilt and the anger that she's going to feel, you know, that if you don't address it, ends up getting pointed at you. This is the thing about negative feelings. Has to go somewhere. You can't not have them. And in my experience, all disease, all misery is nothing short of self-directed shame and anger. Anyway, all right, so let's see here. Jersey Shore, this may be vague, but the worship of particular planets extends their help to you. Well, the planets, every deity, whether it's Odin or whether it's Jesus, whatever it is, any deity has a planetary vibration. For example, Odin is Mercury, Jesus is Jupiter. So you have to understand what the vibration of those planets are. So when you worship a deity, not only are you worshiping that entity, I'm not saying the entity doesn't exist, but you are worshiping that entity, but you're also tuning into that particular vibration of that planet. So the question is, how were you, when you were put into this body, what were the vibrational components of you? Do you vibrate well with that, or does it make things challenging? By the way, what I want to say is that, you can't make a mistake when it comes to worshiping. There are planets that, you're not particularly aligned to, and if you worship them, it will cause challenges, could cause tremendous challenges. You will learn from them. So ultimately, everything goes to your benefit. In fact, traditionally, like a couple thousand years ago in India, the guru would give you the planet that was going to be, or the deity that was going to be the most challenging for you, because the idea was the faster you bump into your karmic challenges, the faster you can achieve rebirth. So nowadays we don't do that. We look for ways to experience things a lot more easy. So, there's no wrong way to do it, but I personally want things to go smoothly. I want to enjoy my life. So when you worship particular planets based on your chart, that will have an indication of how you vibrate. So I don't know if I answered your question. It will help you be your best self, which is what this is all about. And so there are planets and energies that are there to help you, which simply means that you are more vibrationally aligned with them in this life, which means that you will feel as though the result is you will feel like that planet or that deity is helping you or likes you, if that makes any sense. All right, so Renee went bye-bye. I don't think there's any more questions. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye for now. So happy Easter, happy, spring celebration, whatever it is that you do to celebrate transformation and resurrection. For those of you that don't know, there is the advanced shamanism class, which is, you can go to thunderwizard.com and you'll get to my Patreon page, and you can either subscribe to see private videos. So I'm teaching Master Shamanism course right now. We're going through the runes, deeply through the runes, but if you go back to the beginning, it'll lay the foundation for the thunder wheel, which tells you how to get the benefit of the energies of not only, by the way, all of the 8 directions have connection to planets, since people are asking that. The benefit of all the planets and all of the energies and all of the 9 worlds. And let's see, what else? What else do I have to plug here? Please continue to subscribe and like. Share these videos with Facebook and wherever else nowadays that people share videos. I don't even know where they do it anymore. And, persistence. So the last thing I'll say is, no matter how difficult your issues are, no matter how difficult they are, if you apply persistence, if you persistently keep doing those things that, using those tools that can change your unconscious mind, it may take a while, but if you persistently do it, you can then completely change your reality. And more importantly, you can achieve fulfillment and happiness, which is what this life is all about, in my personal belief. So, having said that, my friends, thank you so much. Until next time, may the ancestors and the gods be with you, and may the blessings of the mother of the dawn, the goddess Easter, may she shine upon you during this Easter Sunday.